Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beat On. That man staring at you in the screen. If you're watching us on youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy, is the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, the fantasy master, Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How you doing over there, Gray?
Hey, what's going on, B Don? I'm doing good, man. Just living my best life. You know what I'm saying? I I got plans to go to Italy in the off season with Cougs. So we're planning our trip. We're going to Bologna. Maybe you've heard of the deli meat.
Yeah. What does that pair well with in Italy?
Mayonnaise. I'm sorry, mayonnaise.
That'll be fun.
Hey,
We have
Giuseppe, do you have a mayonnaise? My friend here, Gray, he comes straight to Bologna to get the mayonnaise. Yeah, it should be good. I'll probably get kicked out of the country.
Yeah, so is that happening directly after like the regular season ends, or are you gonna wait till the postseason wraps up?
No, actually, I think our trip is planned for the end of October. So we'll be out of the regular season for sure. I think it might be during the World Series, maybe. I don't know. I'll I'll read about it online.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. I think after like 7 straight months of baseball, Cougs is like, can I have a week? I have to bend to her will sometimes. So yeah, I gave her 1 week a year.
Yeah, poor you. You have to go sit in Italy for a week. We really feel bad for you, Gray. That's
Oh,
it can be really tough.
oh, my arm! Stop twisting it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so two and
I
a half
think
weeks left in the season. I mean, I feel like you're either super busy right now because you're grinding every single thing, or like you're done. Like you,
you
you're
know
you're
what's
mid
funny
pack
about
and there's
yeah.
nothing to do.
You know what's funny about our podcast? It's been like 5 weeks to go for the last like 7 weeks. It's like we got 5 weeks to go. 5 weeks to go. We only got 5 more weeks, and then suddenly it's like, well, you got 2.5 weeks. Good luck.
Figure it out
Uh,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Speaking of people,
It's actually it's. I feel like it's pretty instructive of how many people play head to head because those are really the only people left doing baseball. Most of everyone with Roto, I mean, which makes sense with Roto, except for maybe one in every, 10 to 15 leagues. They're all pretty much decided by this point. Like it's very little you can do in Roto. Where head to head, it's like, oh my God, it's like my entire season's coming down to a Drew Smiley start. Yeah, that's head to
yeah,
head for you.
yeah, that's how the head-to-head game works for you. Okay, occasionally, um, I mean, let's move on, Gray. Let's talk some baseball here. A guy that I mean, I don't know what's going on here either. I never thought I'd see the day where we had to worry about Juan Soto potentially going underneath the Mendoza line for batting average. I mean, I realize his OBP is still amazing. He's still getting on base at almost a 400 clip, but he has a 217 average in 48 games here in the second half, Gray. He has 5 home runs and 1 stolen base over that time. For the season, he's hitting 239, 402, 452. He has 25 home runs and 6 stolen bases. I mean, I never thought I'd have to be worried about Luke Voigt potentially having a higher batting average than Juan Soto over any period of time, Gray. What's going on with the lock of the century of the week in Juan Soto? Like, is it time to be concerned that San Diego is ruining him, or is he hurt, or what's going on?
Yeah, no, actually, speaking of the Mendoza line, I'll get to Juanson in a second, but I was actually, I wasn't following that closely to Giancarlo Stanton, and he's actually hitting 209, which was, I realized that on Sunday, and I was like, whoa, that's really bad. Wow. I didn't realize he was doing that bad in average, or that bad in everything really. But Juan Soto I have noticed because I got him in a couple leagues, so That really stinks. One league I have Juan Soto and Matt Olson. Yeah, that league's not doing so good. Yeah, that's an
But
NL.
really good coming out of the draft, though.
That's NL only. And I also my two top picks in NL only. That's Tout Wars, by the way. My three top picks in Tout Wars this year. NL only, 12 team. Juan Soto, Matt Olson, and Ozzy Albies. Oh, not great. Anyway, yeah, Juan Soto, it's actually kind of interesting because if you look at Juan Soto's like walk rate and strike, like his walk rate is down a little bit, but not really that bad. Like he's still, like you said, his on base percentage is still over 400. Um, I think his Ks are around what they were. The crazy like not the actually I don't know if it's crazy, but because of his walks and his strikeouts being so similar, you would kind of think all his plate discipline was also pretty much in line with past seasons, but it's not really at all. Like his O swing is way up. So his O swing is how many times he's swinging at balls outside of the strike zone. And that went from 15% last year to 20% this year. Not outside of his norm completely as of like his previous seasons before 2021. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty high up from last year at least. And then his balls that he swings at inside of the strike zone, that's way down from last year. And that's way down from his career numbers. It's at 58.6%. That's down from 62.8% the previous year. So what's that? So what's that saying? So it's saying that Juan Soto is basically swinging at balls, and he's not swinging at strikes. It's not great. I mean, it's not good for anyone really. But it's even the best hitters are going to struggle if they're swinging at the wrong pitches. In order, if they're so that's going to lead to more than likely it's going to lead to poor contact. So I'm saying that without even looking. So then I scroll up to his hard contact, and his hard contact is way down from last year too. So it checks out. It's not good. Like if you're swinging at, if it's just basic common sense, if you're swinging at pitches outside the strike zone and you're not swinging at strikes, then you're gonna hit balls that are gonna be more pitches, which is gonna mean your hard contact is down. And even Juan Soto can only do so much if he's hitting pitches. Unfortunately, like that seems to be the issue. Like that's what I'm going off of and what I'm seeing. Like his ground balls are actually down. His launch angle isn't terrible. I don't know if people remember, but in the first half of last year, Juan Soto's launch angle was so far down that he was actually grounding out a lot. He was grounding out to second base, and he was making contact, hard contact, but it was a ground out to first or second base, which was never good. So now his launch angle is actually decent. His fly balls are decent, but like I said earlier, because it's bad contact, he's making fly ball outs, which is going to be, like that's look at Rhys Hoskins and what he hits for average. Like it's okay for power. Like Juan Soto's hitting, I mean he was in a drought where he hadn't hit a home run in a while. He homered on Sunday. His power, like if he gets into one, his power should be fine. His launch angle looks decent, but he's making weak contact, so he's hitting a lot of fly ball outs. And yeah, I mean his average has plummeted. He's not looking great right now. So what I do think the optimistic takeaway is his fly ball outs and all this weak contact and everything I'm talking about will, it's a slump. And what happens with a slump is, a player ends up getting, he falls into a slump and things get much worse before they get better. So hopefully everything looks fine, assuming he's healthy, which I do believe he probably is healthy. He's just, he's in a slump, and I think he can come out of it. Like, I'm still hopeful. And, I wouldn't be surprised if next year, when he's drafted at like 15 to 20 overall, which I would guess is probably going to be his ADP, when he's drafted around that range, he's probably going to be a bit of a bargain. Like, I could see a bounce back next year. I think I'm still optimistic, but it has been brutal to own him this second half. Anyway, so what's your thoughts, B-Dub?
Yeah, so I mean, to some extent, we kind of discussed this early in the season when we were doing kind of the player previews and everything. Like we mentioned, Juan Soto is an amazing hitter, but he does fall into kind of the Joey Votto kind of trap sometimes, where he's looking at so many pitches, and he's so good at like placing the ball that he may not always get to, the home run numbers. We never really expected the average to drop out. So that part I really don't have an explanation for, other than kind of what you had said, which is just he's chasing a little bit more. He's making worse contact. I mean, his BABIP is 242. That's horrendous for as well as Juan Soto, who hits the ball. Something that was kind of, I don't know if it helps Juan Soto's case at all, but like just an interesting note, like he has very similar like underlying numbers to his 2019 season, but of course in 2019 we had, the Nerf balls that would go for forever. And so that season ultimately looks a lot cleaner than this year, in which, the balls just aren't flying out like they did in that season. I don't know. I think he gets it back. I agree with you in general that he's going to be fine for the rest of his career. I don't think this is any kind of big thing. I think it is just him chasing and getting maybe a little bit, launch angle happy, just because that's not his game. I know he kind of adjusted it last season because he had gotten to a ridiculously low point in his launch angle, kind of Christian Yelich at his worst. But I'm not worried long term. I think for the rest of the season, there's nothing you can do, obviously.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, he's got such a good eye that I do kind of, it's like I feel like his what pitches to swing at will come back to him pretty naturally, because he's always naturally been so good at choosing the right pitches to swing at. So I think this is kind of like just a slump, to be honest. I mean, it sucks if you have him on your team and he's doing this and he's slumping this bad. I mean, that's obviously not great, but I mean, I think he's going to come out of it. He's so young. I honestly, I would be buying, especially in like a dynasty or a keeper. If you can get him like, even 75 cents on the dollar for next year, I would probably be doing it, because I anticipate him coming out of this slump and being good. Like Petco, Petco isn't that bad of a park to hit in. It used to be worse. It's not as bad anymore. Yeah, I would be buying in a keeper or dynasty league.
Yeah, I mean, you said 75 cents. I think it's like if you get 90 cents, like I would still make that deal. I would take any discount you can potentially get on Soto. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be the hitter we know and love. I don't know that he's ever going to be the power bat that we once thought he might develop into, like a 500, 315 type of hitter. But if he's just going to hit 30 home runs, sit in the middle of lineups, that's perfectly fine. And he's again, I think the hit tool is
write
going to
that. You know what? I wouldn't even write that off, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 45, 50 homer season from him at some point. I mean, he's still 23. He's got he's got a good 4 or 5 years there, maybe even six to 7 years, up until about age 30. I mean, he could have one of those years where he goes off and he hits like 45, 50 homers and 325. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a huge year from him. Maybe not next year, but at some point I wouldn't be totally shocked by it. I think he's still got all of that potential in him.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets his swing grooved and just gets hot, there's really, there isn't an upside that he can't potentially hit. It's just the launch angle, the way he's selective, like that just leads to less opportunities for him to take the ball out of the ballpark because he is so selective at what he swings at. And that's, I think, for him to get back to it, like that's part of what has to come back is him being selective at the right times. So we'll see how that goes. Part of it, I think, is just him switching teams, switching divisions, and seeing different pitchers too. So he'll adjust to that as well as he spends more time with San Diego.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So last week, we talked about Michael Harris the second, who has just been just destroying it since he came up. Another guy who has just been performing. I mean, he's been in NBA Jam on fire levels for this entire second half. He's hitting 331, 391, 489 over these 50 games in the second half, 5 home runs, 16 stolen bases. Is Jake McCarthy. I mean, first half wasn't great. 242, 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases in 32 games. He got called up during the first half. What are we doing next year, though? Like, is this Miles Straw or is this Adalis Garcia levels?
I would say I would put him more on the Miles Straw comparison if I had to, which isn't great. I don't know. I mean, he's had some decent years in the past. Like he's been okay in the minors. He definitely has a little bit of power and and he's got good speed. I was about to say a little bit, but he has actually really good speed. So he has like 25 to 35 steal speed, and that's a pretty big gap. But I mean, maybe I don't know, put it at 30 steals. Yeah, I mean, he could potentially. I don't see like Adolis Garcia. I think has way more power.
Yeah.
If anything, I think McCarthy maybe at best is like a light Randy Rosarina with maybe 15 homers and 30 steals. It's still not the best analogy, but yeah, I mean it's not like I don't think McCarthy is like bad. I just don't think he's this good, especially when it comes to average. Like I just don't see him like right now he's hitting 301 with a 360 BABIP. I don't know. He feels more like a 250 hitter. And then a 250 hitter gets in a slump and hits 220. And before you know it, the Diamondbacks are platooning him. So like that's really my biggest concern. I think his power and his speed are more or less legitimate. I think there's probably his speed is legitimate for sure. His power, like I said, I mean, 15 homers even feels like it's on the high side, maybe closer to like 7 to 12 homers. Conservatively, say 10 homers, 25 steals, 255 next year if he has everyday playing time. That doesn't sound terrible, especially in a deeper league. I don't think it's really like that feels like a guy who could be on and off of waivers in shallower leagues, especially like an RCL league. I mean, he could be. I could see him getting dropped during his cold spells. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a Michael Harris the second situation for me because he doesn't hit the ball with authority like Harris does, as you kind of mentioned. I mean, if you just kind of pull up his hit tracker and just look at like where he's been getting hits, like it's mostly infield hits. So maybe the shift away from the shift is maybe McCarthy's one of the guys that it actually might help slightly just because he's going to continue to kind of put the balls in play. He does have speed, so he can maybe maintain a little bit of the high BABIP that he has right now. I'm with you. He's not a 300 hitter. I do think there's some potential here just from a speed perspective and how important speed is in our game right now. So I think like different
Actually, and
positions.
also there's going to be the pickoff attempts are going to be limited next year too. So I mean McCarthy if he's hitting if he's getting on base Yeah, maybe, and steals go up next year. I mean, in theory, they're supposed to go up across the board, so that makes steals less valuable. But if a guy like McCarthy can steal 30 plus bags, yeah, I mean, he's going to have value. I just don't know if he's going to have this much value.
Right.
I mean, it's like he feels like a guy who had like Miles Straw last year, like a guy who had a really good half. And then, like we see this year, I mean, Miles Straw is like, he's the worst case scenario for like Jake McCarthy if he goes to like, the extreme where he falls into a slump and he's hitting 220, then he becomes the 9-hole hitter on the Diamondbacks, and it's like, who cares? Then he's on and off of even a 15-team mixed league. It's hard to like even with steals as a 9-hole hitter. It's hard to carry that in a lot of leagues unless you're really desperate for steals. Then he's a SAGNOF play, which is fine, but then it's John Birdie during, like right now when John Birdie's not stealing and you're holding John Birdie on your team, you're like, oh, can I drop John Birdie? you know?
Miles Straw this year went around 130, 140 gray in NFBC drafts. Do you feel like that's a comfortable range for McCarthy? Is that too high, too low? What do you think about that range for his ADP next year?
Mm, that feels high, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe around like 190 to 210, I think. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard because it will definitely. I mean, I could see helium in the during March in the draft season. Like if he's hitting leadoff and he's hitting well in spring training, then I could see him getting bumped up to like 130, 140. But I don't think he's going to start off that high. I don't know. I'm out if he's at that high of a range. I mean, that sounds like too high for me. I got too burned by Miles Straw this year. So I'm biased, but yeah, I mean, we all have our bias.
Yeah, I don't have an issue, I think, towards the back end of like the 140 range. If that's where he's going to kind of sit, is 140 to 150. Anything more than that, I think I'm probably with you. I do think there's a little bit more to Jake McCarthy than we did have with Miles Straw. Just kind of looking at the batted ball profile, then also just the age. Like Straw was 27. He's kind of like a lower profile hitter. McCarthy has a little bit of prospect pedigree um, behind him, and I think he's shown a little bit more than we saw from Straw last year.
I was doing a find in the ADP in this preseason's ADP. I was trying to find Jake McCarthy, so I did a find, and as I was typing it out, I got to Jake McGee before Jake McCarthy. Remember him? Yikes!
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think maybe like the Akil Badu range, like 150 to 160 is really where I'm at on McCarthy because that feels right. Like Badu had like that really good second half. He didn't really feel fully real, but like the numbers looked good
Actually,
enough.
Akil Badu isn't a bad comparison because he also sucked this year. I can see that happen. Like Jake McCarthy, I honestly worry. Like, I mean, his strikeout rate in like a half a season this year is really good, but so much better than it was in the minors. I mean, maybe something clicked for him where he realized that he has to make contact, and he's a better player overall if he's making contact because he's got speed, so he can like like his BABIP plays better with contact, so maybe he's stopped trying to hit like home runs even though he has hit some home runs, so maybe he has become a better hitter. I don't know, maybe I'm selling him short. Maybe this is the start of something. Like he's like he looks on the face of it like he could be a trap for next year, like a Akil Badu or a Miles Straw. But on the other hand, he looks like he also could be like a Tommy Edman, where he could hit like 15 homers, steal 30 bags, and hit 270.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy Edman doesn't exactly hit the ball hard either. So I think that could be the upside play of McCarthy. The contact numbers do look better. I mean, he's making good contact on everything. I don't know where that came from because, as you mentioned, like he has a high K rate track record in the minors, even though a lot of small samples in the minors, so really hard to pull too much from that.
I could see potentially getting in on him in like a draft and hold, or especially if you're drafting early, like if you're drafting November, December of this year, because I feel like his ADP might be lower early draft season versus late draft season. Like if people start, if you start getting people in March who are out there saying like Jake McCarthy's going too late, then his thing goes up so high where he's then going too early. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, you've kind of sold me a little bit on him, just on this, on our pod. I think, yeah, I mean, maybe if you're in like a TGFBI or NFBC, and it's a draft and hold and you need steals, because like, I mean, I've held Miles Straw. Speaking of Miles Straw, I've held Miles Straw for a good part of the year in a deep enough league, just because of the steals are so valuable. But yeah, like I said earlier about pickoff attempts being limited. So I don't know. I'm on the fence, obviously, but I'm a little bit more interested maybe now.
All right, glad I could change it a little bit, Greg. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out for Jake, and if he keeps this going. I do like that he keeps just sliding up the lineup. Like he's gone from seventh, and then he hit sixth for a while, and now he's hitting 3-4 for them a lot. I don't know if that's really the best use of his skills necessarily, but that's where they got him. So I mean, I'll take all the runs and RBI that you can get. At least it's early in the Arizona lineup if you're going to be in that lineup.
Yeah. Yeah, no, completely. Also, I mean, Corbin Carroll should be hitting at the top, and they got. I think Josh Rojas will be back, but then like I don't. Then it's just a mess. So then yeah. So I mean, Jake McCarthy might be included in that mess somewhere. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their lineup's going to look like next year, but Corbin Carroll should be towards the top.
Yeah, one would think and expect that to happen. Somebody that you had towards the top of your rankings, and I'd imagine you have all over the place this year, is Bo Bichette. The first half was good. It was fine. It wasn't top three, top five player like he was being drafted in some leagues. But the second half has been much better. He's hitting 330, 373, 584. He has 10 home runs, 4 stolen bases. He's going to get his numbers for the most part that you expected. Stolen bases are going to be down, obviously, from 2021. I mean, what are you looking at for him in drafts in 2023 without the stolen bases, but still hitting in that sweet spot of the lineup? So, I mean, he's been valuable all season, even when he wasn't necessarily producing at the rate that we wanted to, just because he was getting runs and RBI. Is he kind of in that, like Juan Soto range for next year?
Yeah, so he's probably, he is in the like, I mean, I would guess he's in that category of like he's gonna get counting stats like for sure, because he's just like in such a good lineup, and he's good for average. So if he's getting, the 100 plus run, 100 to 100 plus runs, depending on where he is in the lineup, obviously. But if he's getting like 100 to 100 plus runs, 100 to 100 plus RBIs, and a 285 average or better, you'd figure that he's going to be he's going to be a top 25 player. Like it's at worst that's going to happen, because like, even though you can't really rely on runs, RBIs and average with Bo Bichette, you kind of can. Like he is a rock solid, like, I mean, unless like something super fluky happens, but then super fluky could happen to anything or anyone, like, like what's going on with Juan Soto, like we mentioned earlier. Like, things can happen. but you would think you'd be able to bank on Bo Bichette getting good runs and RBIs and average. So then you're just left with like the two things that should be more or less like rock solid that are like a little bit more up in the air. Like his power, he's probably a 25 homer guy, neutral luck and everything. So, I would say 25 homers. And then the steals are, oddly enough, because like steals are usually like power and speed are things that don't usually change like this dramatically season to season, especially for a guy who's only 24 years old. But yeah, his steals are so far down. Like you said, I mean, he's got 11 steals and he's been caught 8 times. It's like, that's awful. I mean, it's good that he's at least trying, but I mean, I think even the Jays are like, if you're going to try and fail, stop trying. It's like, cut it out, man. It's not cool. So I mean, and even with his second half being so much better, like you mentioned, hitting 330 in the second half, as of the recording of this, he still only has 4 steals. So it's not like, he's getting on base so much more, but he's still not stealing a lot. So if he's it's bizarre too, because he has good speed, so he should be able to steal more. So if maybe like this is where like, there's science and then there's like, the what we're doing here, which is just like, there's sort of like a big chunk of like maybe it's just like
incoherent rambling.
yeah, it's just like what is he gonna do for steals next year? Like there's like he could go to, he could work on getting better reads. The pickoff attempt limiting of next year, maybe that'll have an effect. Like there's so much non-science here. There's just anecdotal evidence of like he has speed, so he should be able to run. Like last year, he had 25 steals and only 1 caught stealing. This year he has 11 steals and 8 caught stealing. So it's like, I mean, he shouldn't have lost that much speed between the seasons. And next year, like, if there's going to be more steals, like, it's so hard to say because, and that really is going to make a huge difference in his value for next year. Because, like I said, he's probably a 25 homer guy. He's got 100 runs, 100 RBIs, and 285 average. Then it's just going to come down to, like, the difference between 10 steals and 25 steals is going to be huge. So I don't know, man. It's gonna be tough to call. I think I'm still in. By the way, I'm still gonna be in on him next year, and still at like second round. Like the real, I think I either said this on the podcast last week or I said it somewhere on the site or something. That like Vlad Guerrero is probably going to be like in the Freddie Freeman range next year, like, like 12 overall, like somewhere in that range. I would think Vlad is probably going to go around there. So it's like, is Bo Bichette, is he before Vlad or after Vlad? Probably after, but I'm in either way, I think. Like, I don't know. I still like him a lot. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I like Bo Bichette. I mean, he's a great player. You were higher on him this year than I was, just because I kind of thought last year's steals were kind of best case scenario because he's fast, but he's not Trey Turner fast. He's not among the fastest people in baseball. He's fast enough to steal bases, and the fact he went 25-1 made me feel good because he's been raised in baseball. Like he understands how to get jumps, he understands how to read. But then this year, 11-8 makes me think that I was just wrong about that completely. I would say, if he's going to go towards like 20, the back end of the second, early third in 15 teamers, I'm probably in at that price. If he's going to go towards like the back end of the first round, early second, that I'm probably out on. I'm probably going with somebody else that maybe has more upside.
I think with Vlad actually stealing this year a little bit more, but that doesn't feel like a thing that you could necessarily count on either. Like Vlad could have 10 steals this year, and I think he's still probably going to get projected for like 3 to 5. Like no one's going to expect him to steal 10 again. If he does steal 10, I think he's at 8. Anyway, like Vlad or Bo Bichette, it sounds like you're saying Vlad for sure.
Yeah. I think so.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, I think Vlad is like, Vlad is also similar with runs and RBIs and average. Like, but power, he's got more power, but I think he's got less speed, even though right now their speed numbers, their steal numbers at least, are not that different. So, yeah, it's hard. I think they're going to probably be pretty close in ADP next year. I don't know. I like Bichette, but Vlad feels safer when it comes to power, and his power is higher than Bichette, obviously. So yeah, I'd probably say Vlad first over Bichette too, but close though.
All right, I'm going to throw a few more names at you for Bichette's value here, and we're going to talk about one of them next, and that's the Ozzy Albies. He was going in that kind of, back end of the first, early second this year. And then, outside of Albies, there's Mookie Betts, who is going in that range, but obviously has been performing this year, but he's going to be another year older. Was this just his last year where he's kind of doing that? And then I'm going to ask you Julio Rodriguez. Like those three guys, I feel like are all kind of going to be mentioned in that same range, and it just depends on what you're looking for potentially.
I don't think so. So I think Julio Rodriguez and Mookie Betts are going to be way above those guys.
Okay.
I think they're Mookie Betts and Julio Rodriguez are top 7 at worst. I think Vlad and Bo are probably early second round for 12-team mixed league. So between 12 and 15, I think. And then Ozzy Albies is going to be after, because this year was such a lost year. No one's drafting Ozzy Albies in the top 20, I don't think, next year. He could be a good value. Don't get me wrong. I might be in on Ozzy Albies, but I don't think he's getting drafted in the top 20 next year.
Yeah, he might not. I feel like what holds somewhat his value up is just like second base is still kind of a crap position.
Yeah, for sure. But there's also recency bias, bias, and people are going to be like, "Oh, he didn't really play last year. I'm not drafting him in the top 20."
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand how it's going to end up working, but I'd honestly say like Ozzy Albies probably outperforms Mookie Betts next year, and they're going to go in opposite directions on draft day because of what happened this year. Even though Albies is younger, Betts is getting another year older. Like recency bias is going to play into that. But I feel like they're still going to come out similar.
Yeah, exactly, and that's probably why I'll be drafting Albies everywhere. But I won't have to draft him in the top like 7 overall.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, let's move over to some arms, Gray. Spitzer Strider, I know we've talked about him a little bit on the show, obviously. I mean, how could we not? But he has 200 Ks in 130 innings. He beat the big unit, Randy Johnson's record, by 2/3 of an innings pitched. He has a 38.3% K rate. That's 6th in the majors in total Ks. Ohtani has 196. Cease has 214. He's the number 3 pitcher on the player radar over the last 30 days. Most Ks over that time by 8 strikeouts. Is this finally the pitcher that's going to break your Braves pitching curse, Gray?
Well, I will say that Max Fried kind of isn't in that same Braves curse, category, because he's been okay. Not as good for Ks, obviously, but I'm saying like the for people who are unfamiliar, and if they are and they're listening to this podcast, how could you be unfamiliar and listen to this podcast? It doesn't seem likely that you don't know what I'm about to say. But like Ian Anderson last year was so good, and then he just, crapped the bed this year. Tuki Toussaint previously. I think it was like Jar Jins as the one who started it.
Oh no! Oh
There's like
no!
these great Braves pitchers for like 1 year, and then they just totally disappear. So I don't think Strider is going to be in that category because the K's are just so good. I am concerned about the jump in innings from last year to this year, but I don't know. Maybe that's maybe overblown of a concern. I mean, he has been so good. I'm actually kind of surprised that no one else has gotten to 200 Ks in a shorter time span than since Randy Johnson, because that feels like a while ago, and so many pitchers like strike out so many guys. Like you think of like Darvish, like some of those big years when he had like crazy K per nines. So I'm a little surprised actually that Strider was the one to break the record, but that feels like a record that could get broken like once every 3 years, because pitchers strike like guys just strike out so much now. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think Strider, like, I mean, he looks so good that it's like kind of like shocking how it's like this is Strider is actually a good guy to look at and see why don't invest in like pitching, because like he came out of nowhere really. Like what was his ADP was like nothing because he wasn't getting drafted. I mean, it's like no one drafted Strider, I don't think. Like in any leagues really. So yeah, I mean I really like him a lot. I think he's probably his ADP, by the way, for people who are curious, was a 722 overall. So yeah, no one was drafting him. Yeah, I think I think I'm probably gonna like him with some caveats. Like I think because of the innings pitch was such a huge jump, I could see liking him, but hedging it in a way where I don't really draft him, unfortunately, because it's just like I don't know. There's just the worry about the innings, and he could potentially. I would guess he's going to get drafted way higher than I'm going to be willing to take him. Is my guess. I don't know. I would be shocked if he gets out of the third or fourth round, right? I mean, he's going to be drafted. He's going to be drafted in the top 50 overall in drafts, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be just obsessed over just because of the K's. I mean, I'm probably going to obsess over him, so I can't really say anything because the
But then
K's are
on the other
so
hand,
amazing.
I'm sorry not to interrupt, but then on the other hand, you have like Dylan Cease, who was so obvious. Like I wrote a sleeper post on him, and when I was writing it, I remember thinking like, is this silly? Because like he's not really going to be a sleeper. But then he was kind of like I feel like any pitcher who is going to get drafted like you know as late as Cease was this year, who has like top five starter capability, that's still a sleeper. Even it may not be like, getting drafted at 700 overall and having like, top 100 value potential, but it's still, there's still some sleeperness to it. Sleeperness. That's a word. But anyway, like Dylan Cease, though, like he seems so obvious coming into this year to me, and his Ks were obvious they were going to be there, but he was still drafted fairly late. But I think Strider, I don't know. I feel like Strider, for people who are wondering, Dylan Cease was going at 80 overall, which is still like really, I mean, that's an NFBC. I don't have it in front of me, but I think like ESPN and Yahoo had Dylan Cease way later than that. Is my guess. I mean, he was getting drafted later. I ended up drafting Dylan Cease everywhere, and I don't draft top starters. So like I don't know, maybe Spencer Strider surprises us and gets drafted after the top 50 overall, which would put him in range of, possibly for me drafting him. I don't know. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh no, that's fine. I was saying I think he kind of falls maybe in that like Freddie Peralta range from this year, like 50, 54, 55, somewhere in that area, just because he has the upside, but it's the innings. And, in the fantasy baseball community, that if you haven't shown it before, people get a little leery on it. So I feel like that knocks down.
Right. That's actually a really good. Yeah, that's a good comparison. Freddie Peralta, who I was actually really in on this year, and I thought he was also a guy who was going like, I was willing to take Freddie Peralta as the number one starter. It didn't work out, but that's like the worry with Strider is like because Peralta had taken such a huge jump in innings, that's my concern with Strider too. It's like I don't know. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's only been like 45 innings or so on Strider. Now he's going to the playoffs more than likely with the Braves, so we'll see how many innings that he stacks up in the playoffs. But right now it's only sitting in like 40, 45 innings. By the time we get through the playoffs, that might be 60. That is a little bit more concerning, especially if they go deeper into the playoffs, and he's just throwing for longer. But I mean, I think if he just gets like 140, 150 innings, that's all you need out of him, though, because he's going to put up such dumb strikeout numbers for you in that time that you can fill in some of the innings with the Cuetos and Chris Bassett's and the people who don't get strikeouts, but maintain your ratios.
Oh yeah. By the way, like, how does someone like Spitzer Strider? Like, I don't watch minor league games, so I don't pay attention to prospects that closely. Like, when a guy gets called up, at that point I go and look at them. But how does a guy like Spitzer Strider get through the minors with like a 40 prospect grade and like it's like I don't get it, man. I honestly, I mean, people, not that I don't miss on people, but like it's just it's weird to me how badly like some people are like, they look at him and they're like, yeah, he's like barely 40 grade is like nothing. I don't know. I mean, I don't I miss on guys all the time. So it's not like I don't miss on people. So like I'm not saying like, I'm somehow perfect, but like if you watch Spitzer Strider, wasn't he mowing down minor leaguers? I mean, what? I mean, I didn't watch him, so I don't know, but it's like if I was watching him, I feel like I would have saw it and been like, "Oh, he's really good." I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely just mowed down everybody. I guess part of the issue was he ran up through the minors so fast. He went from A ball to AAA last year, and then came up to the majors this year. Like there was no time to adjust because he was up and destroying like before we could really make it rankings. And I think that's part of the problem with rankings is like unless you're going to come in and adjust all the time, which Itch does, I think 3-4 times a year, which is great. Like that's a lot of work to redo prospect rankings and catch all the Spitzer Striders. But yeah, I'm with you. How do you watch him throw and not be like, this kid's going to be something special?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a prospect guy. There's something. I mean, I'm guessing maybe that people thought his command was just so bad that he would never, that maybe that was why, or maybe he developed a pitch this year. I don't know.
He did develop the slider.
Yeah.
Last year that was something they had him working on.
Right, that was last year, but yeah, right. And he yeah, I mean he has a little bit of a change, but it looks like only 5% of the time, so not really. I mean he's basically a two-pitch pitcher, which is always like, I go back to that thing that I say all the time that's like if it's two pitches, it doesn't matter if they're two really good pitches. It's like if no one's hitting your two pitches, you don't need four pitches. You only need two pitches if no one's hitting them. So anyway, we okay. So who else?
Andy Johnson didn't have the third pitch until he was like 30, so it'll be fine.
Right. Yeah.
Let's move on to a guy that prospect people did not get wrong and who has been performing amazingly since getting called back up, and that is George Kirby. Obviously, another just great young arm. Second half, he's had 53 and a third innings pitched. He has a 2.03 ERA, a 0.98 WHIP, a 29.2% K rate, and a less than 3% walk rate. Great. George Kirby has been everything we thought we were going to get the first time he came up. We have gotten it now. Like, he's looked amazing.
Right. Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, and almost like maybe this is the type of arm that prospect people understand better because of like the command is so good. Like it's like if a guy is able to command his pitches, that's easier to spot than a guy who just strikes out everyone and is wild. I don't know. Maybe I'm just guessing, but yeah, I mean George Kirby, like you said, I mean his command is so good. It's like if you go back to like, command is really everything. Like if you're able to command your pitches, then you could just like, you can work around having not having great velocity, but George Kirby has great velocity. So he's got the double whammy of like having really good stuff and great command. So, yeah, he's another guy where I'm really concerned about the innings jump. And even the Mariners have been trying to limit him. So I mean, I wish he would kind of like, chill a little bit. I kind of wish he would get shut down, but yeah, I mean, he's great. I mean, he's always he'll be solid as long as he's healthy. I like him a lot. I think I could see him in next year. I could see him in that range of pitchers that was like where Alek Manoah went, like that, 30, 30th starter off the board type range, where, there might be some concerns about the innings. The K's are good, not amazing, but I mean, he's in a great park. I wouldn't be shocked to see a George Kirby year of like a 2.50 ERA and under and just an insanely good whip. Like he's really good. I have nothing bad to say about him. I'm just worried a little bit about the innings jump.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going in that 90 to 130th starter type of range like Manoah, I'm going to have a ton of shares in him, just like I did with Manoah, because I think he's just going to be a phenomenal pitcher. On the innings jump, it's like 30. It's going to end up being 30 to 40 innings. I mean, the Mariners are right, kind of on the border of the wild card, so maybe he gets in another couple of outings, but I'm not as concerned. It sounds like in the innings jump, just because I'm willing to kind of look past that. But that's just how I kind of play it with the young arms. Now, a guy who I was looking, I honestly pulled up the last 30-day player rater, and like he just kind of like stood out to me because I'm like, where the hell did he come from? Bailey Falter is number 9 on the pitcher player rater over the last 30 days, Gray. He's had 45 and a third innings pitched in the second half. He has a 2.98 ERA, a sub 1 whip, a 21% K rate, and a sub 4 walk rate. Not at the K rate of the two guys we just talked about, but is there something here with Bailey Falter, or is this just hot ride?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything here really. I don't know. I don't see much. I mean, he's got good command, so that's good. Like I was saying before, like if you're able to, it's like a Miles Mikolas or something. Like if you have good command, you can get by with like a 8K per nine or under, which he's doing right now. The command should play into him having him avoiding like homers, but his park is like, he's not in a great home park. He has been giving up a lot of home runs. His ground ball rate is so goofy low, and his fly ball rate is pretty high. I don't really have like strong feelings for him outside of being a streamer at this point, but if he's got good command, I could see him having like worthwhile value in deeper leagues, but in shallower leagues, I don't really see it outside of streaming.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I think the best case scenario is he becomes one of those low K solid ratio guys. but a lot of the numbers just look like he's getting lucky, and he's a fly ball pitcher in a park that is not meant to be a fly ball pitcher. I'd feel a lot better if he was, say, in San Francisco, then I might believe this a little bit more. But sitting in Philly, like that's one of the worst parks you possibly put a fly ball pitcher in.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, a guy that actually popped up in our Razzball chat this morning, Jeffrey Springs, number 17 on the play radar over that 30 days. He's above Brandon Woodruff and Garrett Cole in 121 innings this year. Is a 2.5 ERA, a 109 WHIP, at 26.5% K rate, and a 5.9% walk rate. He's not actually a velocity gainer. If anything, he's lost some velocity, but the movement is up, and he's throwing that Tampa Bay sinker change pitch. Apparently Tampa Bay went after this guy specifically for his arm motion. Is Jeffrey Springs real?
Yeah. I mean, he looks more real than Falter. I think Jeffrey Springs could be one of those guys that like has good value next year and is like a number 3 to 4 starter for fantasy and is drafted like 200 or later. And I could see even potentially writing a sleeper post for him next year. Like he looks like he's got good command. He's got good strikeouts. It's more about the stuff versus like he's not overpowering, but yeah, I like him. I think Cool Whip just wrote a post about him. So people can check out like Cool Whip's write up about him. But yeah, I think there's going to be something here for Jeffrey Springs. If anything, I could see maybe not writing the sleeper post because Cool Whip's already covered him. So I could see just like pointing to Cool Whip's post versus writing it all again myself. But yeah, I mean, I think Jeffrey Springs looks decent. I'm interested for sure. I don't think, I don't believe it's just like the Ryan Yarbrough random year when he looked good and then he just fell into obscurity. I think there might be something here with Jeffrey Springs. I think there's potential. I don't love Kevin Cash, limiting the innings so much where you're like, oh, like Jeffrey Springs got a good 2-start week and then he goes like 4 innings in both starts. You're like, oh, oh, Kevin Cash, you're killing me, bro. But yeah, I like Jeffrey Springs. I think I'm in on him for sure. I don't know. I think the price is going to be relatively cheap too because I don't see anyone really pushing up his ADP. Maybe 175 at the most, 150 possibly, but more than likely in shallower leagues for sure, he's going to be he's the kind of guy that ESPN probably won't even rank. Like he'll be going so late in some leagues. Like I could see him going after 225 overall in shallower leagues.
Yeah, I mean, he is the kind of guy that gets kind of forgotten about when we look back. Everybody's going to remember Strider. I hope George Kirby doesn't get inflated, but that's probably just me wishing on a star. But like this, Jeffrey Springs is the kind of guy who can fall through. I will say, I think he's probably closer to the pitcher we saw, like at least the numbers wise from 2021, like a mid 3s ERA, solid whip, decent Ks, not anything amazing, although his K rate in 2021 was amazing. I think the K rate from this year across the larger sample is probably more fair, just because he does have a very high left on base, and he's picked up this new pitch that usually gives you a little bit of a boost in the first year. I don't know if when people come back next year, if people chase it at the same rate that they are right now. So a little bit of decline. He's also going to be turning 30. So, of course, my age just comes into play. And I'm just like, 30-year-old breakout. But, yeah, if he's going in like the back 250, 225, 300, anywhere in that range, I'll happily take a shot on him. And even at like a 3.5 ERA, he's a solid streamer.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, Gray, something real quick that we're going to just talk about, and we'll address it if he actually signs, because there's been rumors that Kodai Senga is potentially getting posted. I only really bring it up because the Cubs are mentioned as the primary suitor for him right now, so I had to bring him up. He has an out in his contract, but he's still getting paid pretty well. Anything here that you want to talk about, or just move on?
Is it me? Uh, uh, Am I missing something, or is he not thrown since 2019?
Kodai Senga?
Yeah.
I thought he was throwing this year.
Oh, was he? I
He's
don't
throwing
know.
this year.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's the stats I'm looking at. I tried to find his stats. I don't know. I have 2019 as his most recent year, but I guess I'm missing something. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like he's older, right? He's gonna be 30 next year. I think he is basically just like he's like in that mold of like good whatchamacallit, good command. You know, K's are okay, solid, but not amazing. And then Japan to the major leagues supposedly is like going AAA to the majors. So you figure he's going to lose K per nine. I don't know. I mean, he's looked fine in Japan from what I'm seeing for is I was able to find he has been pitching. I was able to find this year's numbers. Anyway, yeah, I mean his numbers look good. I don't know. It's hard for me to get super excited about like after I'm so spoiled by Otani that yeah, I mean he looks like he could be serviceable like as a number 4 to 5 fantasy starter with maybe 3 upside. I don't see higher than fantasy 3 though. Maybe I don't know. Maybe a 2 if he just really surprises people and his ratios are good, but he's going to be a ratios bet. I don't really buy the K's coming over and I don't know. Do you have something for him? I don't know. I mean, he seems okay.
Yeah, I mean he has like a low to mid fat 90s fastball. He throws like a fork ball, which is kind of one of those weird Asian pitches that pretty much only Asia still throws. He's got a bunch of different like junk balls he throws. I'm with you. I don't think the K's are going to be anything special. I think he's at like a 9.5 to 10K per nine in Japan. So yeah, I mean you're looking like an 8 to 9 at like the best. Um, I don't know. He's fine. I think what you're looking at would be, I don't know, like a Jordan Montgomery type,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. A Montgomery or
useful, but like
yeah, useful for sure. Like nothing, like not bad, but like an ace. I mean, maybe for stretches for like a couple weeks here and there, but I don't know. Not really, not like top one. I would say maybe drafted in around 150 just for people who want to take a flyer and who are excited about the upside. But in reality, probably 180 to 210 overall.
yeah, I think that's probably about right.
Yeah.
So I think we're in the same page, and we'll discuss him a little bit more. When and if he signs. He has a very cushy contract where he's at. I think he has 4 more years left on that, but he does have an out because he wanted to potentially explore this move over. For what it's worth, just kind of relating a pitcher back that you're maybe more familiar with. Miles Mikolas in his last year in Japan had a 9K per nine. He sat in like the 7.5 to 9 over in Japan. So we know kind of what he is over here. Senga has a little bit more K potential than Mikolos, but there is that K drop.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was kind of like. I was about to say Mikolos when you said Montgomery. I think Montgomery's probably more accurate, but Mikolos isn't. I don't think he's totally far off either from what he could potentially do. Like I think Mikolos is probably a little bit lower on strikeouts than what Senga could potentially do. That's why I say Montgomery's more than likely the comp that you're going to want here. But yeah, I mean, Mikolas is a good example of a guy who, like strikeouts are just a little bit higher in Japan, and then people come over here and they're just not as high. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, totally.
All right, Gray. Any SAGNOF help for the people chasing those last minute saves as we get down to it?
Yeah, I think also let's see. So SAGNOF, there's Fairbanks has been great. Kevin Cash, again, going back to Kevin Cash, he's not necessarily a guy who Kevin Cash that is a guy who's going to just stick with one person, but Fairbanks has been good for like the whole second half, really, and probably should just be rostered in all leagues. I think Buck Farmer got a save on Sunday. I don't think I'd speculate on him. I don't know. Alexis Diaz has been good. Even if the Reds go to Farmer, what are you going to get there? 2 saves? I mean, how desperate are you, bro? Jose Leclerc seems to be the new Rangers closer, which I don't even know why. I'm not even joking. I don't know why. I don't know why they suddenly made him the closer. But yeah, so I think also Duran in Minnesota has sort of become the closer. But he's also a guy that Baldelli has said he doesn't really believe in naming a closer. So there's that. But also Baldelli has gone to Duran for multiple innings. So once Duran goes, like if Duran goes for 2 innings, say today, he's not going to be able to go for 2 days. So, if there's a save opportunity, then Lopez or Fulmer or someone else is going to get the saves. So I think Duran is the best bet in Minnesota, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be an everyday closer. I think there's potential there where he could be the closer in situations, but not necessarily every situation. And then I think also, and Jorge Lopez is there, and he's struggled. He hasn't been as great for the Twins, but he's been good enough where I think he'll probably get a save or two. So yeah, I think that's more or less the big news. Did you have any more closer changes?
No, I think that pretty much covers the ones that have happened since the last time we talked. I know there was a couple that adjusted, when we talked about it last show, but I think that's pretty much anything that has justice. It's funny in Texas, like they have 5 guys who are all pitching really well this second half in their bullpen that could all be potential closers, and that's without Joe Barlow, who we thought would be the closer the entire time. So it'll be interesting looking at Texas next year when we're talking about closers, because they can really go with any number of guys as we enter next season.
And they probably will, depending on the week.
That's been how it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, Gray. How about some waiver names for everybody, and then we'll get out of here.
So Rodolfo Castro has been so crazy hot. I don't know where that came from. I think it's more or less a hot potato, and I don't think it's gonna last very long, but it has lasted longer than I thought. So I mean, he's definitely someone I would look at. And Rengifo, for whatever, he still isn't even at 100% owned in RCLs, so he's probably available in ESPN leagues, and he's been hot again for like going on months now. He's been hot. Aristides Aquino has been hot. The Reds outfielder. Alex Call has been hot. Jan Moncada been really, essentially awful for 98% of this season.
Can confirm.
Really terrible. I guess he plays well when Tony La Russa is not around. So Moncada's been good. Brandon Marsh has been great. I've actually had Brandon Marsh in a few leagues where I've been rocking him for a while now, and Yandy Diaz has been, relatively hot. What about you? What do you got?
I'm just always going to mention my boy Jake Fraley anytime he does anything even remotely okay. So that's one. If Eric Haas is somehow out in your league, I mean, he's been great, and obviously you have the catcher eligibility there. We talked about Josh Jung's call up last week, and he's been doing everything that we thought he could possibly do so far. Will Myers randomly, he just kind of has popped up this second half and has actually been a fantasy producer, kind of like old Will Myers a little bit. I don't know that it carries through anything more than just this second half. I wouldn't really count on him as a 32-year-old next year, but for now, he's actually played pretty well this second half, so I don't mind that one. On the arm side, guys that have been pitching well with some good matchups. Ross Stripling, I think, is actually a 2-start pitcher this week, although you're probably listening to this on Tuesday if you're listening to the podcast, which is why you should go to youtube.com/razzballfantasy and watch the show on Mondays instead. Brady Singer, Drew Smiley, who we joked about earlier, leaving your matchup in his hands, but he's been really good this whole second half. Mitch Keller has a matchup against the lowly Cubs. Anibal Sanchez, I didn't even know he still was in the majors, Gray, and he's been great this whole second half. Matt Manning has a good matchup. Marcus Stroman gets Pittsburgh in the versus the two terrible teams from NL Central. So yeah, there's a number of arms that you can potentially go out and look at for some streamers this week.
Yep.
All right. As always, if you have specific questions, you can go into the comments section. You can come to youtube.com/razzballfantasy. You can go to Twitter. I am at RazBeaton. Gray is, of course, the owner of the @Razzball account. And until next time, good luck in your matchups, Gray. I'll talk to you later.
All right, Lates.